Okay, so let us also discuss one effect of this relativistic formalism, and that is the Doppler effect. And this is analogous to the Doppler effect that we see in case of sound waves. Right? So, as such, what this effect means is that the radiation, the wavelength or the frequency of radiation, and now I am basically mean electromagnetic radiation, or for purpose of this discussion, let us say light. So the wavelength or frequency of the emitted light is dependent on the relative motion, or is dependent on the motion of the source with respect to the observer, or the observer or observer with respect to the source. Right? Analogous to sound wave, this is also termed as Doppler effect, and if one wants to differentiate, then one can say it's a relativistic Doppler effect. Right? Okay, and what we'll do is we'll try to see again an instructive derivation of the effect of this Doppler effect on the frequency of emitted radiation. Right? And one of the important things about this is that this is, the shift in the radiation is verifiable or measurable with reasonable accuracy relatively easily. So many of the effects of relativity can only be seen in case of their effect on microscopic particles at very high energies. So which one sees in case of high energy physics or nuclear physics. However, there are few effects which can be observed with reasonable accuracy in using the normal terrestrial experiments, and one of them is the Doppler effect, which is again nowadays it's very much useful in radar communication, satellite navigation, etc. Right? Okay, so let us try to see this instructive derivation of this. So we are going to derive the shift in the wavelength or frequency because of relativistic effects. Right? So for example, let us say that we have an observer, right? So who is stationary and ground, so call him observer. So maybe you are the one who is trying to measure the frequency of radiation. We have a source of light which is kind of emitting photons, so moving with speed c, and the source itself is moving with speed v relative to the observer. Right? So this is our usual premise, and now we are looking for the frequencies. Let us say this in the source frame. So in source frame, let us say frequency of emitted light is, let's say, mu 0, right? And for time being, again, I'm not going to go into the nature of the light, so I'm not going to treat it as, let's say, an infinite waveform because it's a monochromatic and all that. We'll not worry about those because, as I said, it's an instructive or a demonstrative derivation, right? So let us say the frequency of the emitted light is mu 0 or mu 0, and by this, what I mean is that let us say the source in general emits these pulses, right? And the rate at which it emits these pulses, right? So each time a pulse goes out is this mu 0. That means in source frame, let us write down time duration between successive pulses of light is then, we'll call it tau 0, and this is equal to inverse of this frequency, right? So effectively this is the proper time in the source frame. We know that in the frame of the event, the time and length will be the proper time and proper length, and if there is a time difference or there is a time duration between successive pulses, right? So in terms of this wave, speed of light, which we anyway know, or speed of these pulses is c. So we can write down wavelength as, the wavelength will be then basically the distance between two successive pulses, right? And which is what? This is the time, this is this, so C tau 0, and this is nothing but C nu 0, right? So, and of course we know that for electromagnetic radiation or for light, the wavelength, let's write it down as lambda 0, is the speed of light divided by its frequency, right? And the light has this unique property that, as we know, in any frame, its speed is constant. So the product of wavelength versus frequency is then going to give us a unique constant, which is then going to be speed of light. Right? Anyway, so this is the case, right? So this is in the source frame, right? Now let us go into the observer's frame. So in observer's frame, now for the thing is, there are two effects. One is because the source is going to the observer, and second is the emission of radiation in the source or in the source frame, right? So what is happening is, first of all, there is a clock in the source, right? So now I am connecting it to our previous discussion on time dilation and the Lorentz transformation. So the emission of light pulses at regular intervals in the source is basically a clock, right? So let's say a clock is ticking with this time period, tau 0 unit time, and every time it makes a kick, it emits a light pulse, right? And then 1 over inverse of this is the frequency, and the lambda is connected to that, right? So there is a clock in the source. Now since the source is moving towards the observer, first of all, we will have the effect of time dilation, right? By which what we mean is, now for the observer, the internal clock of the source runs bit slowly, right? So if tau 0 is the time for emission of photons or for emission of the pulses in the source's frame, then in the observer's frame, right? So time dilation effect is in the observer's frame. Let's say this point, I'll write it as A. A corresponds to time duration between successive pulses. So time duration between emission of pulses in the observer's frame. Let's write it down as tau, right? And this is equal to gamma tau 0. This is the time dilation effect, right? So this is no. So first of all, the clocks of the source are themselves running slow, right? So all the clocks, all the processes in the source will appear to be running slowly compared to its own frame to the observer, right? That's one effect. So the tau that we consider is then gamma tau 0. And second effect is the normal relativistic effect, because the source is also approaching this. So what will happen is, let's say, see the effect of that. Let us say, so now we know that at this rate, the source is, so when I measure at the rate the source is emitting, I will measure this time period. And now, I also have the pulses have to come up to the observer, right, for the measurement. So one, the clocks are running slow. Second, now, once emitted, the photon moves to speed c, right? So the first photon will then take some time to come to this, right? By the time, now the second photon is generated after this time, right? So in this time, right? So let's say in this time, let's say starting with 1. So first pulse travels a distance, what do you call it? C tau, right, in the observer's frame, right? By the time the second pulse starts, now for second pulse, right, source has moved a distance v tau towards the observer, right? So of course we know that, so if you know the final distance, we can find out how much time the pulse will take to come and all that, but we are not really interested in that. What we are interested in is finding out this wavelength, that is the distance that we will measure, right? Because the speed of light is constant, the distance that we will measure between successive pulses, that's our wavelength, right? And once time has changed, other thing has changed is that the pulses, successive pulses, are not being emitted from the same distance. The source is moving towards the observer, right? And every time a pulse is emitted, the source moves, this is tau, the time period. So the source moves this much distance, right, between this thing. So what this means is that so what this means is, from here, what we'll get is, not time, distance between successive pulses, which is lambda, right, in the observer's frame, is then nothing but C minus V if the source is moving towards the observer, right, and tau. Okay, so this is lambda, and now so in that case, frequency at the rate mu in the observer's frame is then, well, C by lambda, because the speed of the light or the pulse is still C, so C by lambda, which is then C over C minus V tau. And now we can use this expression here, the time variation. So nu is C over C minus V gamma tau 0. We'll divide by C, so this will be then nu naught gamma 1 minus V by C, right, where V is the velocity, and we know what is gamma, right? Gamma is simply 1 over square root of 1 minus V square plus C square. So if we do that, what we'll see is, this is basically 1, and here this will be 1 plus V by C over 1 minus V by C. So this is then the frequency. So original frequency, or the source's frequency in its own rest frame, is mu 0, mu naught, and if the source is approaching the observer, then the observer sees a different frequency, which is differing by this factor, and in terms of this dimensionless number beta, I can also write it as 1 plus beta and 1 minus beta. So this is the, and this is what? This is the relativistic Doppler effect. So this is relativistic Doppler effect, and this is the expression for that. Once you know the velocity of the speed of the source or the observer relative to each other, one can find out what will be the shift, redshift, or what will be the frequency shift, and corresponding wavelength shift that one will observe. Okay. Now, something that you should notice here is that now, so we started analysis by saying that the source is moving towards the observer, right? And then we did gave all these arguments. In fact, you can show the same thing. You will arrive at the same expression if instead of source moving towards the observer, it's the observer which is moving towards the source, right? So the Doppler shift is unlike the regular normal Doppler shift in case of sound waves. And again, so in case of waves, so Doppler shift will be seen for all kinds of waves, but mostly for waves where the wave requires a medium, that means that velocity actually depends on the frame of reference. There, the Doppler effect gives us the usual result, and there it matters if the source is moving towards the observer or observer is approaching the source. In this case, no. Since speed of light is constant in all natural frames, the effect of that is that the Doppler effect becomes a bit more simpler in the sense that now it simply depends on the relative motion between the observer and the source. So we don't have to worry about if the source is moving or the observer is moving. Right? Okay. And the answer comes out to be this. Now, what one can ask is that what is the effect of, let us say now instead of source moving towards the observer, it's receding from the observer, right? So what I can do is I can write down the formula for Doppler effect for both of them, and you can quickly verify that in the other case you can use the same argument, and we can see what is the other formula for other case. So let's write it here. Frequency shift, right? One source or observer approaching each other, right, with speed v. So in that case, we found out that the shift is 1 plus beta over 1 minus beta, right? Second, source or observer, because now we don't have to distinguish which one is actually moving, receding from each other. So relatively, they are going farther and farther away with speed v, right? And in this case, one can show that this will be then simply 1 minus beta over 1 plus beta, right? So these are the two relations for Doppler effect, right? And one can make again a simple observation that in both the cases, right, beta is v by c, right? And what this means is it's always less than 1. Maximum it can be 1 because we know that c is the ultimate speed. So maximum it can be 1. So since beta is always less than 1, in case of this, mu is going to be greater than mu 0. So mu 0 is the rest frame frequency, and here we will see that 1 plus beta will be larger than 1 and 1 minus beta will be smaller than 1. So the overall multiplication factor will be more than 1. So if the source and or observer are approaching each other, then the measured frequency, observed frequency, is more than the frequency of the light in the source frame, right? And what this termed as, so this is termed as blue shift, and why it's termed as blue shift is because by taking example of the rainbow, we know that at the highest frequency in the rainbow is violet, blue, and then the lowest frequency is the red, orange, red in the other end, right? And that's how the wavelengths are changing. So frequency larger than the natural frequency or the proper frequency, let's say, will be termed as blue shifted. So this is called blue shift. And similarly, in this case, mu is going to be less than mu naught, right? Because this term will always be less than 1, and this is then termed as red shift. So you might have heard of this thing that one claims that the universe is actually expanding continuously, and the data for that comes from observations of the interstellar objects or the stellar objects, right? And what one says is that when looking from these big telescopes like Hubble and others, one sees all the galaxies and stars redshifted, right? What that means is we see the light coming from there, right? And we typically know what is the composition, or we assume what is the composition should be there. For example, if it's sun, right? And sun is very close to us, so we can study the spectrum of the sun, right? And the radial velocity is not that large between sun and earth, so we can also compensate for this kind of Doppler shift. And we know that most of the stars are then of the similar composition, so the strongest line will be coming from the same elements or at the same wavelengths. However, we see it shifted because of the Doppler shift, related to the Doppler effect. And what one sees is that predominantly most of our objects, when observed from our frame, seem to be redshifted. That means everything is sort of receding away, or the distance is getting farther and farther, and that is why we term that the universe is expanding. Okay, so this anyway, more on this one can do in later courses. So anyway, this is the Doppler effect, or this is the effect of Doppler effect. We'll come back to it in the next lectures, right? Just to quickly do the same analysis and its effect using the photon picture now. right? But there is some time for that. To end, what we can also write down, and I'll leave this exercise to you if you want to prove it. It goes on exactly along the same arguments. So what we showed was if the object or the source are moving towards each other, right? So along the line joining the two. Now what can also happen is relative motion or relative velocity, relative speed at an angle, right? So for example, I can have a source which is going in this direction, and maybe I am the observer, right? So at the instant of observation, the source is going in one direction making angle theta with the observer, right? What the relativistic Doppler effect will have an expression for this. You can again, what you can do is you can get the velocities into two components and then apply the relativistic effects on both of them. And what one observes is, in that case, again this is for approaching, you can do the same analysis for receding as well, is then mu naught square root of 1 minus beta square over 1 minus beta cosine theta, right? Yeah. Okay. So this is at any angle, and again a very quick observation from here is that, let's say if theta is pi by 2, so when theta is 0, that means source and observer are along the same line, the motion is along the line joining source and observer. In that case, you get back the same result. If theta is pi by 2, that means, let's say the source is here, moving in this direction with relative velocity v, and the observer is along the perpendicular axis, right? So now, classical Doppler effect in case of sound waves and all, there is no Doppler shift. If the sound is emitted in this direction and the source is in this direction, there is no Doppler shift, right? Because there is no relative motion along the direction of emission of sound. In case of light, that is not necessarily the case, and that is not the case because we have seen it earlier in case of length contraction in perpendicular direction, right? So we saw that, not per se length contraction, but the velocity addition in perpendicular direction, and we saw that the lengths remain same in the orthogonal axis, right? However, time dilation is an effect which affects all the three dimensions of space, right? So when you calculate velocity, then the velocity already has effect of that relative motion. The same thing will apply here because we have seen the time dilation. In our argument, one point was the time dilation or the clock of the source itself running slowly, right? Which will be the case for any observer along any axis. So if we take that into account, what we'll see is that even in the orthogonal direction, the Doppler effect has a contribution, and from here it comes out readily. Where if you put theta equal to pi by 2, that means source moving in the direction perpendicular to the observer, and if you put theta equal to pi by 2 here, right? Of course, this term goes to 0. However, this term remains, and what that gives is nu pi by 2 is mu naught upon gamma, right? So there is still, so even if the source is going perpendicular to you with some velocity, you will still see a shift in the wavelength, and that in fact emphasizes the non-intuitive as well as a very, very fundamental nature of this relativistic formalism, that time dilation, length contraction, these are not just geometrical effects because of perception. They actually change the internal behavior of the events, right? In the sense that the clocks, which we using kinematics, where we showed that the clocks appear to run slowly and all that, that's not just the appearance. The clocks actually run slow, because if that is not the case, then in case of perpendicular motion, it should not affect or it should not be observable. However, one does observe the effect of these in terms of wavelength shifts in Doppler effect, where the objects are moving in the perpendicular direction, and that tells us that indeed the internal clock, whatever is the clock, whatever you count as a clock, so every process is happening in time, so that there is some notion of the time passing by in that, so that becomes your clock, and all those processes will be slowed down in moving frames of reference. Okay, so we'll stop here and then we'll take up energy momentum analysis under relativistic formalism next.